All right, third graders. Now it is going to be day 2 of working on writing personal narratives. Today we are going to continue learning about what makes a personal narrative. And today we're going to be using a graphic organizer in order to help us map out our writing. So let's take a look at how to write a personal narrative. So on the right-hand side, it says, how do I write a personal narrative? Write about yourself. The emphasis should be on something you have experienced personally. Write about a small moment. Don't try to write about a giant topic. Tell the story from your point of view. Write the same way you would tell the story to someone else. Make sure your narrative has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Don't forget about spelling and capitalization, and make it interesting. Would you want to read it? Today, we're going to use a graphic organizer to begin mapping out a personal narrative in writing. A graphic organizer helps us to make a plan for our writing and keeps us organized. Let's listen to this book called The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant. And then we're going to take a look at the graphic organizer that the author would have used to recreate the story. Like our read aloud, this is an example of another personal narrative. Trying to make the box a little bit larger, but I don't think it's going to let me.
Welcome to my house. Are you ready for a story? Today we're going to read The Relatives Came. If you have a copy, go get it so you can read along with me. Annie's House! The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Stephen Gammell. It was the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They laughed when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us up against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Then it was into the house and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s through the house. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras, so a few squeezed in with us and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden, and they fixed any broken things they could find. They ate up all our strawberries and melons, then promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road, then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us, too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. The relatives in this story came from Virginia and stayed for a long time, didn't they? Have you ever gone to visit relatives who live far away or had them come visit you? Be sure to tell me about it in the comments below. I would love to know. I hope you enjoyed our story. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Okay, so let me go ahead and fix this. Oops, not that. Move my box back. I was trying to move everything so you could see everything a little bit better. Okay, so if we look at the personal narratives, this is the graphic organizer that you will see. So the top, it says topic. So in this case, it's the time when my relatives came to visit from Virginia. The time was during the summer. The place, my house in the mountains. Then there's a beginning, a middle, and an end box. The beginning would be, my relatives came to visit from Virginia. They had to drive through the night to get here. The middle would be, my relatives stayed and helped around our house. We ate a lot of food together and spent our time hugging and laughing together. The end. Then they left and drove home, looking forward to their grapes. When they got home, they dreamed of next summer. The details at the bottom. Their station wagon smelled like a real car. We could hear lots of laughter. So those are the 5 different senses. You want to think of sensory details. Things that you see, hear, smell, and taste. And then emotions and feelings. We hugged when we saw our relatives. Some cried of happiness, but we spent a lot of time laughing together while my relatives visited. Now notice things are short and sweet, but also notice how this person, because this is their personal narrative, they're using the word I, because they're the ones telling the story. Your task for today. You are going to plan your personal narrative using a graphic organizer like the one that I just showed you. It's time to decide what you want your personal narrative to be about. Remember, it must be about you. It can be a memory you have or even a story about your life. If you need to, you can refer back to this anchor chart in this video that helps us identify what a personal narrative is. You can also look at your heart map from day 1 and see if something is on there that you want to talk about or write about, and you can pick that, but be sure it is specific. Be sure to take your time and map out each part of the graphic organizer, because the more that you do on the organizer, it's going to help you.